and welcome to the first edition of the new video interview series, Dive Into Reiki with. And tonight, for the first episode, we have a very, very, very special guest that I heart like a lot, Helene Williams. And I'm trying to say her name as best as I can, but with my accent, it's hard. Helene, welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I'm just going to give a little bit of a bio so people know a little bit of your background, and then we're going to go right into Q&A. So Helene, I'm trying as best, is a registered nurse and Reiki master teacher based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She has over 10 years of experience providing Reiki sessions in hospital setting and has a well-established private practice. She has presented information on Reiki and holistic healthcare at 2 national nursing conferences, participated in a hospital-based Reiki research study, implemented and facilitated a hospital Reiki Volunteer Program, and in 2013 established the Lancaster Community Reiki Clinic. She also has experience providing Reiki for Caring Hospice Services and actively volunteers at the VA Medical Center in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Helene is passionate about educating healthcare organizations about the many benefits of Reiki for patients, families, and staff. And we actually met at a retreat with our mentor, Francine, probably 3 years ago, and we saw each other last year in a wonderful retreat in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And she has many, many surprises, and is just an amazing human being. So welcome, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm super excited to be talking about Reiki and healthcare and, whatever else you decide to ask.
Well, actually going to start with the first time we encountered Reiki. I think, it's great for us. We all reach Reiki through different Googles, friends. So what was your first contact with Reiki practice?
So actually, I'm not even sure it was Reiki, but my husband and I used to have a farm, and we had a little pygmy goat. Well, he wasn't so little. He was a smaller goat, and he got stepped on by one of our horses. And we still had phone books. So I was looking in the phone book for somebody, a veterinarian who might be out and look at the goat and see what we could do for his little foot because he was limping. And I contacted this vet who I had never heard of before, and he looked at our little goat's name was Elvis. And he said, this is what I want you to do. Every day I want you to take your hands and I just want you to think about loving energy and just let it flow. And at the time I thought he was a little crazy because I'd never heard of any kind of energy healing or Reiki or anything else for that matter. So I did, and he got better and forgot about it. And then when I started working at Lancaster General in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, my manager to learn how to do Reiki. And then it was like, oh, okay, I can go back kind of remembering this goat experience and click, and the two things connected. But it was my first experience with that, energy healing, because I'm not sure it was Reiki. Reiki itself was actually, I learned at the hospital within 3 months of starting there. So I was really, really lucky.
Perfect. So yeah, it's funny because there is goat yoga. We should do goat Reiki. But
yeah.
I'm just going to caveat that today the connection is a little bit off. So if you're looking at the sound, it's a little bit off, or you're listening to this on a podcast, we apologize. But in COVID times, sometimes, the internet is crowded, and we appreciate bearing with us because it's a great story to hear. So you were telling me on your training, because you trained a lot, right? So I would love for you to talk a little bit about your journey trying to find that thing that really resonated with you when it came to learning Reiki versus just taking a workshop, and that was it.
Right. So after I learned the first level at the hospital, then I was kind of encouraged because I connected with it. I was encouraged by my manager to jump to level 2 and jump to level 3 so that I could teach Reiki at the hospital. And so I couldn't, for some reason, find the teacher that I learned from at the hospital. So I Googled Reiki, and at that time there weren't a whole lot of people, but there was somebody who was close to me, and so I went to her, and she's a great teacher, but it was much more of a very westernized form of Reiki. And I kept, like, I did it and it worked and it was wonderful, but I still felt there was something missing for me. So I started going to different classes. I took a lot of different classes. I learned Karuna Reiki, but I still felt like there was like this missing link for me. And it was really hard for me to teach the Western form that I had learned in a hospital setting. And I needed something that was more, also more practitioner based, so that it could be a self-care practice as well. And although I knew that about self-Reiki, it wasn't really emphasized as much as I know it needs to be now. So then I found out about a teacher about probably 2 hours away from me. Somebody told me, Helene, you have to take this Reiki class. And I was like, really? I've taken so many. What else can I learn? It was actually one of Francina's students. And after the first day, I was like, this is exactly what I needed. And it's, of course, a more traditional form where it's focused on the practitioner mostly doing their own work. So that's kind of my journey. And that journey was probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I love that you told me you went to Sedona how many times for the trainings?
Too many to count. And they were great trainings. It wasn't that they were weren't good trainings. They were excellent. It's just that for some reason I wasn't connecting with the way I felt like I really needed to when I started to have my own kind of like really delving into my own spiritual practice. So I was really glad that I was able to keep going and find something that I really connected with and blend so well into teaching in healthcare.
No, and I love that you still were so convinced there was something more, right? So like you kept trying to go deeper. And I think, again, I think the beauty of different lineages is we can all connect. I think sometimes for us it's hard to just find exactly the teacher and the lineage that we need to really, practice the way we feel is right for us. So I'm so glad you found the teacher.
Yeah, I always tell my students that too. I'm like, I'm glad that you're here and I'm glad that you're loving this class, but if you feel like you need to, add something in or there's something missing, then, go take another class from another teacher. I think that's really important that we, like, as teachers, just open that up and say, whatever feels right for you.
Absolutely. And continuing education, I think that is so, so important as well versus 8 hours. So that means you practice like Japanese style traditional Reiki. We could define it that way, right?
Yes, correct.
Perfect. So that means, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't want
to. Just that it's more of a self-development, spiritual development for myself, lots of meditation, the hands-on practice, working with the precepts. Because in order to really hold that space for others, we have to do our own work first. And there's lots of work to do. I have 63 years of work to do. so the more we delve into ourselves, the more we can really hold that space for others.
And it's funny, when I took my first 3 to 4 classes, I basically wasn't even taught my self-care protocol, like the hands position of the self. They taught, like, that was the funny thing, is like, so I think sometimes in our wish to help others, we forget that the base is us. And I think you also as a nurse, right? Like, if you really, as a nurse, you already are giving so much. If you don't have a self-care burnout, and we'll talk on that later, it's even worse, because you need to be able to also do your job as a nurse. So tell me about your self-practice. What is your daily self-practice?
Definitely meditation. And, meditation for me didn't come easily. It's taken a really long time to do that, because I'm a type A, I'm a nurse. And so we're always like kind of overachievers and tons of lists to do. And, you're always in your head. So it took me a long time to develop my practice, but that's a really important component of my daily care now. So meditation every morning, a lot of times in the evening as well. And then a focus on the precepts. And that's something that I didn't feel was, that was missing from my earlier trainings as well, is that although there were, these are the precepts, it wasn't like kind of pulling them apart and saying, oh, well, I got really angry today. let's pull that apart and see exactly what's going on with that anger, or where's all this worry coming from today. So for me, the precepts are the foundation of the practice of Reiki. We have to, try to really be the precepts, really embrace the precepts in all that we do, because that's what it's all about. It's about healing our minds, right? So because when, stress causes illness. And so the more that we can reduce stress with working with meditation and working with the precepts in meditation, the more we can heal our minds so that our bodies can be healthy and whole as well. So, and then the hands-on practice as well, of course. And I usually do that in bed in the morning.
Nice. Yeah, I'm like terrible. And hands-on healing, I have to do it. Like I do it on camera because when I'm on the bed, I fall asleep. I'm like, every time someone says like, if you fall asleep, it's not hands-on healing, I'm like guilty. So I basically have to do it, like, I do it for like the practice, like on camera, but I actually do it like that at home too, because I'm like, by throat. So I admire you if you can do it on bed. And I love what you said about the precepts, right? So a lot of times, like sometimes I feel the precepts have become like an Instagram meme, right? We post them and we love them, or we have them in pretty posters. But there is little teaching about how the precepts are guiding your hands-on healing, right? Because like, don't worry about where to place it in the hands exactly. Do not bring your anger, like let go, right? Be grateful that you're sharing the space with someone. Be compassionate. Or they guide your meditation, right? Like, again, why am I getting angry? What are my triggers? And even like, they guide everything we do in Reiki, and they should guide in life. So I love that for you, like, they have made such a difference. How did you feel because meditation is challenging. By the way, in Japan says that when meditation is challenging, that means you're going to go deeper. So it's a good thing. But do you see, what is the difference that you felt when you started integrating the precepts in your practice versus just really focusing on the care of others and not meditating as much?
The precepts, I think, are, because at least I don't go through a day without some kind of worry, right? So, I can sit with that now and really pull that apart and not go down the route so much of stories. Not that they still don't happen, right? The stories that I make up about things that I worry about or things that aren't going to happen. But when I sit in meditation with the precepts, I can sit and say, okay, what is the story that you're following now? And is this realistic? And then just sitting with, not judging the story so much, but just observing and realizing that it's a story. And then I can go back to my breath in my meditation, using the Joshin Koki-Ho breathing, focusing my mind on the breath. And so, it's like that with everything. And some days I am in meditation and I just feel grateful. And so then I use, gratitude, that Reiki precept of just sitting in gratitude and feeling wonderful. And, of course, being kind and compassionate and all those things. But, it's the first two that always trip us up, the anger and the worry.
Those on hashtag fake gratitude in my case, like I'm a big one, like I'm grateful. No, I'm not. Like, I check with my body and actually I'm not, but that's me because I'm like a little bit of a weird Scorpio. But so beyond, also the favorite element is the precepts, and basically they're the core of it. So I would love for you to give like some tips for people to deepen their practice, right? So a lot of us, we experience that. We go to a training, Reiki 1, 8 hours, Reiki 2, 8 hours. And I know some trainings like the Open Center in New York and other are like longer, but the average training is 8 hours per level, and then masters with luck 3 days. So if you had like, probably for Reiki 1 and Reiki 2, like a tip to deepen their practice, 3 easy things they could do to really improve or go like, just more energy flow deeper into it. And I'm repeating myself like crazy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those people that did level 1, level 2, and level 3 in 3 days. And I did it a couple times. I think that's why I kept searching for something else. And I think, again, like if you've taken a level 1 class, they talk about the 21 days of, practicing, and that's great as a jump start, but you have to continue it after the 21 days, right? It's not, everything isn't all rosy after 21 days. You have to keep doing the practice. And so, just encouraging meditation. And if meditation is hard for you, there's a lot of tools right now on the internet that can be really helpful. So if you only want to meditate, for 2 minutes, that's fine. Or if you want to sit quietly and you're struggling, you can reach out to your Reiki teacher or a meditation teacher. But again, meditation for me is an essential element after a Reiki 1 class, and sitting with your feelings after the Reiki class and journaling about them and what's come up for you, and has things shifted within you? Have things shifted in your thoughts about things? Or sometimes things get stirred up, right? And sometimes we get angry about things even afterwards because something's changed and shifted within us. So just self-reflection, I'd say, would be the second thing. And the third thing, and out of fourth, is just your hands-on practice, of course, and the precepts. Just don't forget about the precepts, because it's all, I think Franz says this too, is the precepts are the foundation and the outcome of the system of Reiki. It's everything, that we need to really bring those elements into our daily lives, so that when we have, like, somebody gets mad at us and we don't have the knee-jerk reaction like we typically do, if we can be thoughtful and mindful about it, if we're working with the precepts and being compassionate to ourselves and others.
Yeah, and I think that is such a beautiful thing you said. A lot of times when I get students, they're like, I want to do Reiki full time, but I need to pay my bills and the business. And I'm like, we can do or be Reiki full time, right? We can do our jobs and be compassionate, be kind, be grateful, not worry other people, not anger with other people. And then we're actually changing the world even further, right? So not all of us can live from Reiki practice, but we can bring Reiki into our lives 24/7, no matter what we do. And so what you just said, I think, is so beautiful and so crucial, right?
Crucial. Yeah, and I think, that's so important too. And, when I was still working at the hospital, a lot of times my coworkers would call me into a room where there were angry people. Like if there was something went wrong with somebody's care, or somebody was not happy with something that happened, and they'd say, hey, Helene, can you go in that room and do your thing? And it wasn't doing a hands-on session. It was just going on and being present and, allowing that energy to flow and allowing that, loving compassion to flow. So it's not always doing the hands-on Reiki, but it's doing the work on yourself so that you can go into those kind of situations and just be able to be the calming presence. And what a difference that can make for people when you're just present and allowing that beautiful energy to flow.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we have to rent you. We're going to travel you all over the US and share your calming presence. We're going to bring you especially to New York before bringing you here, not remotely.
Not that it isn't challenging at times, that's for sure. But usually a lot of times it was amazing to watch how quickly de-escalation can happen when you're just being in a space of loving compassion. People can feel that energy.
But imagine if most of us will do that, right? Like I had a beautiful Reiki 3 student. She told me, like, I didn't expect life would be so hard after my Reiki master, right? And I told her, like, listen, life is still going to be a lot of crap on the way, but you're going to walk on the crap with calm and poise, right? It's just like, you're going to be able to deal with it. And life is not going to be perfect or magical because you're a Reiki practitioner or teacher, but you're going to be able to make it a lot better and improve the lives of others just by being centered and calm and grounded and allowing that compassion to flow through. So I love that. We're very focused on the hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a piece also for me that I was searching for, was more of a grounding practice, not necessarily being, I just need something stronger for myself to be more grounded because I suffer from anxiety a lot, and I've come a huge way from where I was before. And sometimes it's still a challenge, but I think with the meditation practice and, the way that I've been taught now, it's being grounded is like such an important piece going into our daily lives, not only into Reiki sessions for others, but also like just walking out into the world.
So what will you say the biggest gift Reiki practice has given you through the years is?
I'd say the meditation piece, as hard as it was for me, I think that's a key element. And, we have to learn to quiet our minds a little bit, where it's hard nowadays because of the computers and the cell phones and, social media. And we're used to seeing, our minds can't stay focused for more than 5 seconds because we're just so stimulated. And so I think the meditation practice is really an important piece to being really well-grounded and creating some space in our minds so that we can go out in the world and be better.
Love that. And because I also want this series of interviews to be very human, so obviously, we are amazing practitioners, teachers, we have an amazing practice, but I also want to talk a little bit about the biggest oops and mistakes we've done in our practice, because ironically, I've learned more than my biggest mistakes than from my good, calm meditation. So I was wondering if you would mind sharing, being vulnerable and sharing one of your biggest oops, Reiki oops.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it was an oops, but it was kind of the way that I went about things when I first started doing Reiki at the hospital, because I had no clue, like there was no real precedent for me to follow. So I kind of had to find my way. And the first time, well, actually it was the second time, because the first patient that I ever did Reiki for he was just in so much pain. It didn't matter. He was just like, whatever it is, I want it. And it did help him a lot. But the second patient that I went in to see, I just did a knock on the door and said, hey, I'm Helene. I do something called Reiki. Would you like to try a session? And she said, well, tell me what it is. And I came out with the standard, it's universal life force energy explanation. And she just kind of looked at me and like I had 3 heads, and she's like, no, thank you. I don't really think I want anything like that. So, it was for me learning how to be thoughtful about how I explain Reiki. And now that's morphed into, I think it's so individualized because, you go in and you chat with people first and kind of see where they're coming from, and then kind of, tailor your definition to the understanding that they might have already, because now Reiki is more well known than when I first started. So it makes it a little bit easier now.
But I love what you said, because I think a lot of us, when we start being practitioners, we go with like, do you know Reiki? Reiki is blah, 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 right? And we give this speech. I think what you're saying is listen and then explain. I think, and checking if they know about Reiki or not and what their perception is, that is such a great tip for practitioners in general. Like in every walk of life, I think for health, it's even more important.
Yeah, because, sometimes some people knew there was a program there, and so they would Google something before I came in. Okay. And it was not always the greatest thing, because, sometimes you can Google things and get good information and then maybe not so great information. So, it would be like, oh, it's this and this and this. And I'd be, well, you're on the right track, but, how can we explain it in a better way so it's more understanding? Yeah.
So they're asking a little bit, and I think it's great if we can frame it, especially on the healthcare world. How will you explain it now? Imagine I'm not Nathalie, I'm a person. I'm not close-minded, but I have not very much idea of Reiki, and I'm probably in pain in a bed. How will you approach me right now? Maybe we can do a little bit of role play. And I know this is not part of our practice, but it will be interesting since they're asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, knock on the door, ask you how you're doing, if I could talk to you for a few minutes. And then, is your name still Nathalie? Natalie?
Yeah, I'm still Nathalie. I'm not
as a patient.
But I don't have an accent for this one.
So, okay. So I'm a Reiki practitioner, and I share Reiki with patients at the hospital. And I was wondering if you might be interested in a session today. But before we even go down that road, I'd like to know if you've ever heard of Reiki.
I've heard of Reiki. So some people say like it's a massage with no hands. And then other people say that you just put the hands and the pain goes away. But I really don't understand how it works.
Well, Reiki can be done with hands-on or hands-off, so that piece is definitely correct. But it's really about the practitioner just holding a space of quiet, peaceful energy and allowing that energy to flow to you wherever you need it. And sometimes it's a little hard to understand, but it's more experiential. And what I'd like to do is just do a short session for you, maybe just for 5 minutes of being quiet, maybe turning down the lights a little bit if you're okay with that. If you want to, we can play some quiet music and just allowing you to experience this loving flow of energy. And then we can talk a little bit more about it afterwards, about what your experience was with it. And if you feel like you've connected a little bit, then we can do a longer session.
I love that because it's so hard to explain Reiki, like putting in their experience and then using their own words to then guide them. I think that is brilliant, and I'm stealing that from you, like so badly. But it's a great thing because I think it's also, again, in healthcare, and that's something we would love to touch base and we discussed a little bit, right? So when we're in healthcare, there is a different set of rules. Like, we have to adapt the practice a little more. It's different than your personal practice. So what would you say are like the main differences in terms of like bringing a practice that maybe is more Western or more symbols or more ritualistic into a hospital or a healthcare environment, whatever that is?
To keep it as simple as possible. When you go into a hospital, you can't practice anything in the hospital unless there's research to support it. So, of course, I think we're going to talk about that later maybe, but that's an important element. But as far as going in and starting a program, you need to know that hospitals, of course, have policies and procedures. So it's not as easy as always just going in and say, I want to volunteer and do Reiki. There has to be a protocol. There has to be usually a mentorship so that people who've never been in a hospital before, as far as practitioners, know what to expect in that kind of setting, because sometimes it's a little shocking for practitioners to go in who aren't used to, maybe pain and suffering or seeing blood or things like urine or people throwing up, right? So there's all these kind of surprises that you don't expect because you just want to go in and help and you want to help people not be in pain and things like that. But you have to know that it has to be done in a structured way. So there's, when we set up our Reiki Volunteer Program, we created a manual of structured hand positions for the hospital setting so that it was a protocol pretty much, because it kind of had to be that way in order to pass through all the powers that be. So the hand positions were pretty much around the head, the arms, and the knees and the feet, because you have to remember that people have had surgery and, they might have had surgery on their abdomen, so we don't want to be touching on the abdomen, or we have to be very careful in talking about, to the patient, this is where, you can expect my hands to be placed. Is that okay with you? Just like you do, I do that in my private practice as well. Just so there's no surprises for the patient, but there's a lot of steps to get to before you get to even the patient part. I mean, there's things as simple as knowing how to put a hospital bed up and down safely, because that's an important safety thing in hospitals is preventing falls. So if you put the hospital bed up and you leave with the bed up and the patient decides to get out of bed and falls, then that's not good. So there's a lot of things that you have to think about going into that kind of setting it's definitely more structured. And not that it can't be an intuitive session at all where, that maybe you aren't quite following the hand positions. And also, I mean, we just want to have a roadmap of where to go basically, and the protocol and the way we speak about it. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
But I love, there are a couple of things that I think are really important for the people watching. Like uniformity is just for people to feel safe. So it's not really about limiting your practice. It's just about creating a sense of safety, because you have, first of all, patients from like different belief systems, people who don't believe in anything. So you want to make it very simple, pared down. And the other thing I like is like when you say like it can be intuitive, but it has to follow. I think sometimes it came to mind now, we perceive intuitive Reiki as being better than just hands position. And if the practitioner is in a space of compassion, your energy flows freely. Like, it's just, again, like what is limiting can also be an opportunity to grow as a practitioner. If you have to do 6 hands position, make sure you're there with all your energy and it doesn't limit you because you cannot do the practice as you want to. So I think limitations sometimes that we're like, how can I grow as a practitioner versus complaining? Because I was hearing a lot of people starting the programs that are already established, and like for them to follow the protocol, like only like some programs they just hover, some they touch. It's difficult because it's different from the practice, but I would love for them to understand how important it is to create this uniformity and protocols for the hospitals to feel safe and for the patients, right?
Right. I mean, the hospital needs to know that, things are structured, because that's just how it works. That's just part of a hospital environment. And you're so right about being present for the patient. Like, sometimes we think that, oh, if I don't have my hands at a certain place, the energy isn't going to flow. But, it always does, and we set intention too. And I also talk to patients about intention, because a lot of older people don't really understand what that means, setting an intention. And so we talk about that a little bit too before the session, setting an intention, because what Reiki should be doing in that kind of setting too is empowering the patients to work on their own healing process. Because that's what Reiki is helping with too, and it's self-empowerment. So yeah.
That is amazing. And honestly, I'm taking that tip away, because I always say set the intention to receive healing, and I never even consider someone may not understand it. So I think what you're saying is very valuable. Like, let's not assume they understand our Reiki language and our Reiki, like really take a step back and make it very approachable for them. I love that.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole part about being present, right? We have to be present so that we can make sure that we're communicating clearly. That's a really important piece, I think, in that setting, that we have really clear communication. And I've been in settings already where I went into a patient's room and, I said, when I think you signed up for a Reiki session, would you like it? And somebody got really angry and said, no, we absolutely don't want it. And then I had to ask why, and it's because that they had a bad experience at another healthcare facility where a practitioner had come in and not even really talked to the patient, and was drawing the symbols over the patient, and the family was sitting there and they had no understanding about what was happening, and it was really scary for them. So I think we need to be like very clear in our communication when we try to explain what Reiki is and how we do it. And so just being present is really important. And when I talked to that family, I said, can you tell me why? And then they told me this story, and then I was able to re-educate them, and they were okay with the session then.
Oh, that is beautiful. And what I'm hearing is like we have to listen and put them first than our practice first, right? Like, it's funny because it's sometimes again, like at the end, is it an ego thing? We go with the way we're trained, we don't double think, but we really need to take that step back and put their well-being really front and center. It's beautiful. And again, understanding what it is, right? Because if we don't, we cannot do that. So it's very important. And so, because I know you've also been trying a lot to really elevate a little bit, the standard of how we train for healthcare. If I'm a nurse and I want to like really bring Reiki to hospital, like what can I do to make sure I'm bringing like a real good practice? What steps should I take? And also what steps should I take care of myself not to burn out?
Gosh, as for, I think researching is good. I get people that call me and interview me to ask about my experience. And I think that's really important. And I think that's really important to do with any Reiki practitioner. If you're going to take a class from somebody, like call them up and say, what's your practice like? How do you teach? And as just making sure that you're connecting with somebody who maybe has had some experience with doing Reiki in healthcare settings. and making sure that, ask them what kind of practice they're doing. Like, is it a structured practice or, I know there was a practitioner, I'm not exactly sure where it was, but they were doing tarot card readings before the Reiki sessions in the hospital. And that's not a typical standard of practice. So, just asking a lot of questions about how the person practices, and make sure that they have some experience in healthcare. And there are people out there who are doing it. And just make sure that, that there's some kind of protocol that's followed. And what was the second question? I'm sorry, Nathalie.
I joined the question. That was my bad. I'm being the bad interviewer. No, I have another question. I'll go back to that. But so, because also some teachers like you give a credit that is also valid. Like there's some points of credit for nurses, right? For example, I'm not qualified to give that. I just can train regular Reiki. So if you're a nurse and want to practice in hospitals, probably the teacher you want to look also should be someone. And honestly, I took my first Reiki training from someone who gave the credit, but they were not nurses. And personally, I think it's actually nice that you're also a nurse, right? So you have the experience and you give the credits or points or whatever they're called. So you may want to clarify that.
Yeah. Every 2 years, at least in Pennsylvania, nurses have to have 30 hours of continuing education credit. So it's a great way for nurses to learn a self-care practice and also get their contact hours in for their state licensure. But for me, I applied through the American Holistic Nurses Association for my continuing education credits. And it's definitely a process. It's a lot of paperwork to fill out. But it really helps you to really clearly define your programming as far as teaching. So I have a Reiki 1 for healthcare providers class. That's a 2-day class, and it has 12 continuing education credits. So when you apply for that type of thing, you have to also, for nursing anyway, you have to have a nurse planner. So it's, I had to contract with a friend of mine who does that. So, so that she could be part of that process, because it's a requirement, because they want everything to be very educational and solid. So, and that's why I think traditional Reiki practice is also great for healthcare, because it's all about focusing on the precepts. It's all about meditation. It's all about taking care of yourself with a hands-on practice. And so it's very easy to teach. And it's also not that, you don't get the application returned 3 or 4 times with little tweaks, but it's relatively easy to get something like that for continuing education hours.
And I love what you said, because, there are a couple of things I love. Solid, solid practice and solid understanding of the practice. But also, if you're a nurse and you're going to be offering in hospitals Reiki on top of doing your nursing job, right? If you don't have a solid self-care, burnout will happen. And I don't know if you had any experience with burnout or practitioners who burn out, and what advice you can give them.
Yeah, burnout is before COVID, it was a real problem. And of course, it really is now again, too. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm really a proponent of teaching Reiki in hospitals, because the staff needs self-care. They need like a structured self-care program that they can do for themselves every day. So it's definitely Reiki. If you can take a Reiki class as an RN or whatever you are working as in a hospital setting, or whatever type of healthcare setting you're working in, whether it's extended care facilities or hospice, it's just a great self-care practice. And then the other thing is setting boundaries, is an important piece of avoiding burnout, not only, of course, for RNs, but also for Reiki practitioners, because I think, like, innately we want to hear people's stories, and people like to share their stories, but we also have to be mindful of respecting their own time and our time, and just being able to set boundaries, which was a really hard thing for me to do, because I'm a hand holder. I worked for hospice for 5 years, so I like to sit and listen, but you have to remember that you need to take care of yourself. So setting boundaries is like a really important piece. Also, self-reflection and journaling are an important piece too of, avoiding burnout or working through burnout if you feel like you're getting there, and reflecting on your Reiki practice and what you need to do in order to really care for yourself. And it's really always about filling your cup first. And people, I think, who are in the healthcare industry are such givers. They just want to give and give and give and give until it's too late. And then you're tired and you're burned out and you're angry and you don't want to do it anymore. But the same thing can happen with Reiki practitioners. If we go into a hospital and volunteer and we go in for a 2-hour shift of sharing Reiki with the patients, and we end up only seeing 2 because we're just, we just are get a little too involved and not able to set boundaries. So that's really important. Not taking on people's things is part of boundary setting, of course. And yeah, just doing your self-practice as a practitioner, just recognizing that we need that self-care piece, and sometimes knowing it's okay to walk away and say, no, I can't do this tonight. Or whenever it is that you're going in and saying, I'm really feeling depleted today. I don't think I can be the best I can if I need to go in and do Reiki at the hospital this evening. So I'm gonna, take some time for myself tonight and refresh myself, and then go back next week or whenever.
That is beautiful, and that takes guts and being brave and brutally honest. And I think that is also not the usual woo perception of Reiki. We see Reiki as very angelical, and we make these people into angels, always saying yes. I think Reiki should be more human, and part of being human, a balanced human, is, as you said, if I cannot do it, I have to be responsible with myself first, and then even with others, and communicate it and just put boundaries. I love that. I'm still not good at that.
And also to know that, that we're human beings, right? That we're not like, I wish it was that way, but we are human beings too. Whether we're, Reiki 1 practitioner or Reiki master, it's all the same thing. Like we still have times that we experience a lot of stress in our lives. And so it's kind of pulling back and saying, I'm not feeling great today, so I'm going to take a break. And just recognizing that within yourself, because when you push and push and push, and then you just get burned out and you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, and I think that a couple of things are great from what you said. And we hear from France, and we hear from all the Japanese, like, if you don't have tea, you cannot serve tea. So sometimes when we feel bad about doing that, we have to remember that we cannot really serve tea if we don't have it. And I just think it's that, again, being human, right? So we take an 8-hour class. We forget the word practice. I'm a Reiki 1. No, you are practicing Reiki. So it's an ongoing thing. And some days are going to be hard. Some days are going to be good. That's part of the practice. It's not like we got an attunement and then we're magically a Reiki 1 person who's going to behave at a higher level of consciousness. Like, that is also, it's a little bit of fantasy that is beautiful, but it's not helping us to really understand Reiki as a practice, and it's sitting on your bum and embracing all your feelings, as you said at the beginning, to the precepts. I'm angry, let me deal with it, right? Not, I should not feel angry because I got a Reiki attunement. Right. I love, and I think healthcare makes Reiki even more human. The need for being human and down to earth is even more important in that framework.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. To have an expectation that, well, the attunement is a wonderful spiritual blessing, it doesn't mean that we don't have to do our practices. Like, we have to do our practice. It doesn't end the day after the class. It keeps going for your entire lifetime. It's part of the whole journey. And reflecting on the journey and where you were and where you are. And, it's just so important to continue your practice, and recognizing when you're not feeling good, or your worry and anger are coming in, and then just taking the time to work on yourself, because you're going to be so much better for everyone else if you do, instead of pushing yourself constantly and trying to be this person that maybe you think needs to be up here, but we're just like, we're all the same. We're all meandering through this journey, trying to find the right way. And be in a peaceful place.
Right. So I'm going to open, I was going to say the floor, but it's actually the chat box to questions. So if you have a couple of questions, I'm happy. And meanwhile, one thing I wanted to point out, you have hundreds of hours experience, but you still do continuing training. So I would love if you can talk a little bit about what you do to keep on training or going deeper into your practice, while people perhaps they can write a couple of questions they may have for you. I'm sorry.
Are you referring to like my own personal,
yeah, like just
my own training that I keep doing? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
So yeah, I go to Reiki retreats. You know, I do online things a lot. This is a great time where you can, you know, do some more work, like with finding things online, not necessarily Reiki classes, but like delving deeper into your own practice, meditation work, things like that. So yeah, for me, it's an ongoing education. And I think that's just so important. I've heard people they took one Reiki class, or they're a Reiki master and they haven't taken a class for 20 or 30 years. And there's been so much that's been learned about Reiki history, and even, of course, delving deeper into your own spiritual practice that you can learn by just going to more and more and more and more trainings. Like you can't, it's this endless journey. And the more that we can have tools that we connect with that can help us go deeper within, the better for the people that we live with and the people that we encounter every day, people that we work with, just for the whole world.
Yeah, and it's funny, like we've been to the same retreats we share a mentor, so that everybody knows. And you and I, we go to the same retreats, and sometimes we hear the same things, but because our practice has moved 1 or 2 years, we understand it differently. We understand different layers. So sometimes you can even go to the same kind of trainings, but because you're in a different place, you get more subtlety. So, you know, sometimes it's not even like having to do 300 different trainings, but just, you know, even like sharing practice with people you have been practicing for years, like sometimes sharing points of view and those reflections you mentioned so much, that, yeah, taking the time to reflect. And like, by the way, Elaine, like I reflected and I have this crazy idea, right? Like today I've been off from my questions because I've been reflecting with you, but this is really important as well, to have a community to share. I love Claire, she's a patron member, and she just said, I got my attunements and expected that it will be immediate changes. I realize now that the practice is ongoing. And attunements, yes, they're boom, they do bring change, but a practice would be great. So she has a question, or Claire, I'm putting a gender, so apologize, because the name could go either way. So do you share your hospital protocol plan with other practitioners who would like to start a program in a healthcare setting?
I don't, because every hospital programs is going to be different. So you kind of have to tailor it to the program that the hospital that you're working with. I have a Reiki in hospital workshop that I do for Reiki practitioners that kind of like gives you ideas on how to set that kind of thing up. But as far as the whole protocol, I mean, I can't share the protocol from the hospital because that's their information. But I can give guidance on that to that end. And again, I do that in the workshop that I do.
Yeah, and now after we're gonna actually do something before. So, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. No. But that makes sense because those are like protocols are confidential to every hospital. And at the end of this interview, I'll give all of Helene's information so you can reach out to her, see her website, and also learn more about her volunteer clinic. If you're in Lancaster, you may want to get a session. You can also get remote sessions. Yeah, so perfect. So one thing I want to do before we close is, so every guest that is so grateful to come, like my English is gone now, I apologize, especially for the people listening to the podcast later on. I asked them to give me 1 or 2 words about their Reiki practice for me to create a drawing. So I created one for Helene, and I don't know if you want to share your word. It can remain private as well. You have the option. She's thinking.
Well, I can't see you. I can't see you.
Don't see me, no way.
Can you? Is there? Yeah, I can't see you on camera. It's just your little picture. You're this big on the
So I actually then going to, in case someone sees me, that's the drawing. And what they're going to do is to take a picture and send you a text. So I don't know if anyone else is not able to see me. So that means you've been blind. Well, I have a very cute picture of me. And you won't see the drawing either. But so I'm taking the picture. And it doesn't look as well as in person, but you just got a picture with the drawing. Which is in a video, it's here. And it's a big drawing. It's like probably 9 by 10. I don't know.
It is so beautiful. Thank you, Nathalie. Can I show it?
Show it to the camera because I may not be able to show it. So the picture is not great. There you go. So it's. I know it was all about the self, but it was basically you embracing yourself, and it was very much about self-practice and self-care and self-love. And I also want to add again, since I met Helene, I gravitated to her. We were 43 people in a room, and she was among a bunch of calming presence. She was a big calming presence, loving and light, and she gave me amazing tips about Lancaster Retreat. And then I was really grateful we got to meet again and deepen that connection last year. But I really want to say how much I admire what you do and your work and how much effort you put into it. And also how grateful I am that you're sharing these with, everyone, this wisdom, because again, we don't talk a lot about Reiki in healthcare. We talk a lot about Reiki, the key, the love, but we don't talk about the details that make all the difference when we're going to do and take that practice in everyday life, right? Like one thing is our beautiful workshop, but when you get into hospitals, again, the bed thing, putting up and down the bed, I will be the one who killed the person and they fell down, right? Because I will not even think about those things. And again, those are the things, that knowledge, and at least awareness that we need to know that is what will allow us to actually bring the practice in a more serious way in healthcare and to be more accepted and really start getting back that we're getting, a little bit out of the way and bring all that beautiful healing to more people. So I'm really, really grateful. And Suzanne is on. Suzanne is actually a nurse, if I'm not wrong, because sometimes I get wrong. So I'm sure she's pretty happy. Yes, got it right. So she knows what we're talking about. She experienced that in person. And I also want to say the transcript to the interview will be published in my blog, diveintoreiki.com/blog next Tuesday. The video will be widely available on YouTube and my Facebook on Tuesday. And I will include in the notes for the podcast and everything. The podcast takes like 2 weeks. So it's probably going to be January. All your contact information for Helene. But if you have like a shortcut of where to find you right now, a website, please feel free to share right now for everyone. The best way to contact you.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for your comments, for being here this evening. I'm really grateful. I love talking about Reiki and healthcare. So Nathalie will share my information. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you, Nathalie. I'm so grateful. And thank you for the beautiful drawing.
I know.
I'm so honored. So thank you.
I have to send it. I have to find the right cardboard and like mail it in the right way so it doesn't get destroyed. I do have a copy. I'm going to take a carbon copy so that if it gets messed up, I'll do another one. So, but I'm just grateful for these. And I'm talking like at Omega conference, just speaking many things. So I really appreciate you being my first guest. I was excited. Like as soon as I thought of the series, so I'm just really grateful. For those of you who are patrons, this interview will be again locked after tonight for 5 days. So you can access it whenever you want. And then it will be open to everyone. And then in January, we have Nicholas Pearson, who's also fantastic and who knows Helene. So like we're all like a big mafia, I guess. And he will be talking again about the journey. And then we're gonna zero in on crystals and Reiki practice, how to do it in a way that we're not handling the power away to the crystals, but that we actually build up on it. So thank you so much. I cannot say goodbye to you. I want to keep on talking. So I just hope we can get and practice in person. Perfect.